Now, the 2024 Nigeria Transparency and Integrity Index evaluates the performance of government ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs, in promoting transparency, accountability and ethical governance. This annual assessment, aimed at fostering good governance, measures how well these institutions adhere to principles of openness, compliance with regulatory standards and integrity in service delivery. The results provide insight into areas of improvement and recognize MDAs that exemplify best practices in combating corruption and enhancing public trust. Joining me to shed more light on the 2024 Transparency and Integrity Index is Dr. Umar Yakubu, Executive Director, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for inviting me. All
right. Your agency just launched the 2024 Transparency and Integrity Index. How did Nigerians' MDAs perform in the assessment, and what does they say about their level of accountability?
Well, as you know, transparency is a strong pillar of democracy, and for a developing economy like Nigeria, we need to strengthen our democracy because we are looking for a lot of money, both internally and, more importantly, the foreign direct investors to come and invest in the country. And one of the things they look at for is how transparent and how accountable your public institutions are. So what this index intends to do is just to look at drawing from a lot of international commitments and national laws within the country to see how open these government agencies are to certain degree or category for information. Basically, there are about 29 sub-variables across 5 thematic areas. One being fiscal transparency, how open is your budget, your budgeting system, your audit reports, your budget implementation reports. We'll also look at the public procurement, whether you advertise all the things regarding public procurement, whether you publish your report on the procurement implementation report, and whether there was a competitive bidding process for onboarding and those that are engaged in procurement. We also look at things like human resources. How many staff do you have? Your manpower, how many women, how many men, how many people with disability, because we said we're an all-inclusive society. We also look at citizen engagement. Do you release your annual report in line with the Fiscal Responsibility Act? Do you publish all the information, you engage citizens? And even your budget, is it bottom-top or top-bottom approach? How do you apply it? And most importantly, the control of corruption. Most MDAs have policies on anti-corruption, anti-bribery, conflict of interest, whistleblowing, but how effective are those control of corruption policies within MDAs? So that is basically what we do, and we've done it for 4 years now. This is the 4th year where we assessed about 514 federal MDAs, 36 state governments, and 704 local governments.
That's good. Now, which specific MDAs demonstrated the most improvement in transparency, and what best practices contributed to their success?
Well, it's better to take the average. For the last 4 years, I think those have been doing well are the Development Bank of Nigeria, the Bank of Industry, but this year it was the National Oil Spill and Detection Agency. They were the ones that were first, were about 77.92%. Others too did well. There were improvements. Now, when you study the data, you find that some are doing well on the financials, but they're doing very weak on the procurement. All MDAs are doing very weak on the procurement because we know that is where the major component that contributes to public sector corruption. Others are doing well in citizens engagement, some in human resources. So the weak links are the procurement aspect and the control of corruption aspect, and they are linked together. Then when we take it sector by sector, those are we call financial institutions. That is the Development Bank of Nigeria, the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Securities and Exchange Commission. They are categorized as financial institutions. They do well. Then followed by, sometimes you find out the commissions and agencies, such as the EFCC, there is a commission, the NCC is a commission, and all those commissions. But the ones that have not moved an inch for 4 years are the core ministries, about 27 of them. The Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and all of them, all the rest. And of course, the educational institutions too are lagging behind.
Okay, and now does these have implications on ease of doing business in Nigeria, and how does it affect investor confidence?
Yeah, the truth is, even if you look at the Financial Action Task Force recommendations, all these things are to be put in place by a country. Nigeria, in this respect, you make these things open, it improves your ranking on all international parameters which were mostly being assessed. But this is a homegrown assessment for us to improve ourselves, to do well, so that when investors are coming, these are the things they look at. If you are not transparent with your own public institutions, they don't have integrity, they are not controlling corruption. You have about 62 government-owned enterprises that are generating funds, but there is a high degree of corruption and low transparency in those areas. They are likely not going to come and invest their money. Now, if an investor is coming, let's say, to invest in the oil and gas sector, for example, the first thing he does is to go to the website of all the regulatory agencies, and let's say the NNPC now as a limited liability company, and it's the degree of information that he will see that will give him confidence. And if you find that in other countries that are more developed than others, all these things you find them online. So you have the preliminary first stage, you have completed your first due diligence, but because you have found the information and the structures that are there to enable you make a decision.
All right, let's talk about the challenges now. What challenges do you think MDAs face in meeting transparency standards, and how can these obstacles be overcome?
Yeah, what I think is that a lot of MDAs actually have the data. There's nothing in the data, but what they lack is just to publish it on their website. So there have been efforts to go through the Bureau of Public Service Reforms for the federal government and through the Governors Forum for the states and the Association of Local Government Organization of Nigeria, ALGON, for the local governments. So we have gone through them to sensitize them on the need to spread out the information and how all agencies under them can improve on their ranking and their scores. So I think it's that mechanism that just needs to be strengthened using through these three agencies where they will improve their ranking.
Okay, so how are public procurement processes within MDAs being reformed to ensure transparency and reduce bottlenecks?
Yeah, we don't believe there's any reform there because the data shows about 72% of public sector corruption is through public procurement. And one of the easiest ways to stem that problem is to make everything open. You publicize it, and not just in 2 newspapers, as the law says. We are aware of that. Publish it on your website, make it very transparent. Imagine a scenario where you have an online procurement system where nobody can go and tamper of who gets what or who bids for what. Is fully automated. Everything will come down. So the public procurement and the Bureau of Public Procurement has not done much in that regard, and it's similar or probably worse at the state level, especially because they control the local governments. So what needs to be done using the Public Procurement Act is first, I think, to establish the National Procurement Council, because when you have a council, it's a wider set of stakeholders that will be looking at all these things and ensure that procurement practices are followed. 2, I think we need to reduce the influence of politicians in the procurement practices, because what we have now as a country is a lot of politicians bearing in products or bearing in their contracts inside the procurement budgets of MDAs, and that impacts their implementation.
What impact do inefficient processes in MDAs have on Nigeria's overall ranking in the Transparency and Integrity Index?
Yeah, all the problems you have today, you have challenges of insecurity, though it has relatively improved. You have challenges of power, you have challenges of agricultural production, where we have problems everywhere. Our education, our access to healthcare, our access to social service, our roads, all these things, the civil service, these are the platform for delivering good governance. So if the systems are weak, the civil service is not delivering those things, you will not have all social services that I'm talking about. And when you have all these problems, you find out that the investment climate is difficult to invest in, because you can imagine somebody coming to invest where there are security challenges, and those security challenges are enabled by inefficient government systems that are not providing adequate security on one end, or they are raising the poverty level. So the more you have more people in poverty, the more people go into insecurity. They go into conducting crimes and other forms of insecurity.
All right. What kind of reforms should be prioritized within MDAs to enhance their transparency and integrity in the coming years, sorry?
Yeah, I think the Secretary to the Government of the Federation should take the bold political step and mandate all MDAs, at least at the federal level, to comply with all these reforms, because all the elements of the index are pulled out from national laws. We're talking about Procurement Act, we're talking about Fiscal Responsibility Act, we're talking about our Finance Act. They are all pulled from there. So they are already mandatory to be done. So what is lacking is implementation. And these are administrative issues, not law enforcement issues. So is the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation that should be held responsible and should be the one that should push for these reforms. At the state level, the governors, they have a forum. Through the governors forum, they could decide to do it. And of course, the local governments to have an association. They should do all these things, especially now that funds will be going directly to the local governments.
Dr. Umar Yakubu, thank you very much for joining us on the program this afternoon.
You're welcome.